Welcome to This Explainer. Today we're diving into something really heavy, but absolutely crucial to understand, the Lindsay Clancy trial. Now this case has completely dominated the headlines, right? It's sparked this massive national debate. But our goal here today is to just strip away all that outside noise. We're going to look strictly at the facts, the legal strategies, and the timeline of what is, without a doubt, America's most watched trial of 2026. And we're going to do this without sensationalizing the very real tragedy at its core. So instead of just giving you an agenda, I really want to ground us in what actually happened on January 24, 2023. Picture Duxbury, Massachusetts. It's this quiet, idyllic coastal town just about 30 miles south of Boston. On that specific night, police get a frantic 911 call from a husband saying his wife attempted suicide. But, when first responders actually got there, they walked into a scene that was far, far more devastating than just a single medical emergency.
Let's get right into part one. The January 2023 tragedy.
Take a look at this timeline. It really shows you just how agonizingly slow the justice system can crawl. I mean, we're talking over 3 full years from the night of the incident in early 2023 to finally getting the first jurors seated in July of 2026. And this wasn't just your standard administrative delay. This whole period was packed with a grand jury indictment on 3 counts of murder, and then over 2 years of incredibly contentious pretrial hearings. We'll actually get into those details in just a minute.
But first, I need you to focus on this number, 25. That's it. Roughly 25 minutes. That is the amount of time husband Patrick Clancy was out of the house running a quick errand. It was in that terrifyingly small window of time that prosecutors allege Lindsay used exercise resistance bands to strangle their 3 young children before trying to take her own life. Just 25 minutes to change literally everything forever.
It's really important we understand the sheer scale of what those first responders found that night. The 3 kids, Cora, who was 5, Dawson, who was 3, and little Callan, just 7 months old, were found unconscious with severe trauma. Tragically, all 3 of them later died. Their mom, 32-year-old Lindsay Clancy, who, by the way, was actually a labor and delivery nurse herself, survived her suicide attempt. After cutting her wrists and neck, she jumped from a second-story window. That fall left her permanently paralyzed from the waist down. It's just an unimaginable scene.
Moving on to part 2, understanding postpartum psychosis and the defense.
So how does the defense even begin to handle this? Well, attorney Kevin Reddington is building his entire case around perinatal and postpartum mood and anxiety disorders, or PMADS, specifically severe postpartum psychosis. The defense is basically arguing that Clancy was completely consumed by this severe medical condition, and on top of that, they claim she was highly over-medicated in the weeks leading up to the tragedy. Reddington is painting this picture of a devoted mom, pointing to a house just covered in family photos and kids' artwork, arguing this was a genuinely happy home shattered by an acute medical crisis.
So you essentially have these 2 entirely different realities that the jury is going to have to figure out. On the one hand, the prosecution is saying, no, this was deliberate murder, and they point to the specific use of resistance bands as proof of that. But on the other side, the defense says severe postpartum psychosis fundamentally removes her criminal responsibility entirely. As you can see, there is absolutely zero middle ground here.
And adding this incredibly deep emotional layer to the whole legal battle is Patrick Clancy. He has very publicly forgiven his wife. He's spoken warmly about her to people close to the family, which is just astounding to a lot of people. But legally, this forgiveness is now a huge focal point. Prosecutors have actually gone after notes and recordings from a deep dive interview Patrick did with The New Yorker. They are trying to use literally every scrap of evidence to map out exactly what Lindsay's psychological decline looked like leading up to that terrible night.
Let's look at part 3, a trial delayed and the jury's burden.
Okay, so why the massive 3-year wait? Well, it wasn't just scheduling conflicts. These were intense strategic legal battles. For over 2 years, Lindsay was getting court-ordered treatment at Duxbury Hospital, so she was zooming into her pretrial hearings remotely. Meanwhile, the defense is fighting to actually split the trial into 2 phases, a bifurcated trial, and both sides are just going at it over what evidence and which expert witnesses would even be allowed in front of a jury.
And the judge, William F. Sullivan, he drew some very strict boundaries. The defense really wanted to bring in outside witnesses, people who had personally survived postpartum psychosis, to kind of explain what it's like to the jury. But Judge Sullivan said no. He sided with the prosecution, ruling that bringing in these outside testimonies without a direct factual tie to this specific case would just be way too prejudicial.
Now look at this number, 200. There are roughly 200 people on the prosecution's potential witness list. That is a massive amount of people. When you think about the sheer volume of testimony that requires, you instantly get a sense of just how exhausting and incredibly detailed this trial is going to be. We are talking weeks upon weeks of evidence.
Which finally brings us to July 20, 2026, the start of jury selection at Plymouth Superior Court. This was wild because, for the first time in years, Lindsay Clancy, who's now 35, appeared in person. Since she's paralyzed, she arrived in a wheelchair, which meant the court had to make special accommodations. In a pretty rare move, they actually sat her right at the witness stand during questioning so she could be right there, actively listening and participating in choosing the people who will ultimately decide her fate.
And finding those people? Not easy. Out of 55 prospective jurors questioned on day 1, guess how many they actually seated? 5. Just 2 men and 3 women. Legal analysts are pointing to this exceptionally low number as proof of the immense emotional weight here. I mean, this involves child victims. Finding citizens who feel they can objectively handle that level of trauma while also managing the scheduling demands of a massive trial, it's a huge ask.
Part 4. A viral true crime phenomenon. You might be wondering, why has this specific local case grabbed the entire country's attention? Well, it's honestly a perfect storm. For legal scholars, it's one of the clearest modern tests of the not guilty by reason of insanity defense. For mental health advocates, it's this huge spotlight to raise awareness about postpartum psychosis. Then you add in the husband's unbelievable forgiveness, the horrific scale of the tragedy itself, and the fact that outlets like Court TV are broadcasting it live, gavel to gavel. All of that combined has turned this into an inescapable viral national conversation.
Finally, Part 5. The trial ahead.
At the end of the day, this trial isn't really about who did it. It's about why. It's going to be a grueling, highly technical battle of psychiatric experts. The prosecution's doctors are going to get up there and argue Clancy fully understood what she was doing that night. And the defense's doctors will argue she was in the middle of a total psychotic break that completely erased her criminal responsibility. This puts an absolute mountain of a burden on those selected jurors. They have to sit there and decode some deeply complex medical science.
So I'll leave you with this really profound question to think about as you watch the coverage unfold over the next few weeks. How on earth does a jury of everyday people balance the heartbreaking, unimaginable loss of 3 little kids against fiercely debated, highly complex psychiatric testimony? It's a massive question of justice, science, and human empathy, and honestly, there are no easy answers. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Stay curious, keep learning, and I'll see you next time.